round of applause, and then we will listen in to the recording.
I'm Marcus, and I work at STIM. And STIM, it's a non-profit organization representing songwriters and music publishers. And we ensure that our members get paid when their music is played. We've been around for over 100 years, so we're quite an old organization. And we currently have about 100,000 members. And we gross around 3 billion Swedish crowns a year, which we then distribute to our members. I'm the head of our service design team, and our mission, amongst other things, is to try to implement customer journey management or journey management as a way of working within our organization. And the reason for that is that STIM, like many other organizations, is trying to become more user-centered and understand our users in a better way. And most organizations say that they want to understand their users. And in doing that, they collect a lot of data and distill this data into insights, which they then distribute within their organization. But a lot of organizations also find it quite hard to anchor the user's perspective as a coherent whole within their organization. So if you talk to marketing, you get one picture of what the user's experience looks like. If you talk to product, you get a second one. And if you talk to customer support, you get a third one. And that picture is often very scary. But to use a metaphor, you could say that it's like in the organization, we're sitting around a table trying to play a board game. But each department or part of the organization is actually looking at different game boards. So we think we're playing the same game, but actually we're not. And this is where the real challenge lies when trying to understand your users. Because if we don't have the same way of viewing our customers' experience, how can we then align our strategies and priorities to actually make the user journey better? And this is what journey management as a practice is trying to solve. So it's a way of working that aims to give the organization a shared game board, so to speak, one that's built around the customer's actual journey and experiences. And the idea is that if your stakeholders can see the same game board, then they're also better equipped to actually make better decisions. They have the better information and they can actually talk to each other and share the same information to be able to optimize the customer journey in a better way. So where do you begin with creating this unified approach to customer journeys? Well, you have to start with the basics. So first of all, you need to define the users. We need to do user research. We need to understand what their goals, needs, and pain points are. And we need to communicate these insights to our organization in a way that they can easily understand them. We also need to map the journeys. We need to understand what different phases and parts are the user going through. And we also need to map the user's journey from their perspective. So it's not a question of trying to slot the user into our own internal processes, but actually understanding what their experiences is. And third of all, we also need to measure what matters. So we need to find metrics that can tell you as an organization if your users are actually succeeding in doing what they're trying to do. But these things in themselves are nothing new. The design and product community have been doing this for decades now, and we take pride in doing this in a good way. So the thing that customer journey management is trying to achieve is to unify these three things into a way of working to better give information to your stakeholders so that they and the leadership within your organization are better equipped to make the decisions to actually change the journey. So the key thing is to empower stakeholders to have a more cohesive view of the user's experience in order to make better decisions. And we at STIM, we've been doing this for about 2 years now. We've been on this journey, and no pun intended. And we're far from reaching any goal line or find the complete way of how we're actually going to work with this. But we have come to some insights and conclusions, and I'm going to share those with you today. So the first one is that you need to organize for working in this way. So you need to build the right structure internally to actually have the people in your organization to do this. So you need cross-functional teams, you need in-house ownership of the way of working, and you need support from leadership. Because journey management, it's not just a UX tool, it's more of like a business capability. And it needs to be treated as such. And you need people within your organization that actually can facilitate this work. So if we use like a reference to board games again, you kind of like need people in your organization that know the rules and can teach your stakeholders in the organization how to play the game. And speaking about stakeholders, you also need to find the right ones. Because if you look at a customer journey, the end-to-end experience, that often intersects with different parts of your organization. So the people that needs to be involved in the organization to actually make the decisions on how to change this needs to come from different departments. And when you have these people, you also need to find the relevant forums for where they can interact and talk to each other. So you need to know when and where are we going to share insights, when and where are we going to do prioritization, and when and where are we going to make decisions. Secondly, you also need to agree upon definitions. So as humans, we have a tendency to talk about the same thing but use different words, and it's the same thing here. So you need to agree amongst your stakeholders what you actually call the different parts of the customer journey or the different touch points. So if you talk about checkout or if you talk about billing or reporting, what do you actually mean by that? And when you have agreed upon what the customer journey looks like and you have the agreed upon wording, then you also need to have some kind of centralized tool from where you can display the information that you have. And you can go all in and buy like a full-fledged journey management system with all the bells and whistles and do that. But you can also take like a smaller approach and just do a basic prototype in Figma. But the key part here is trying to find some place where you can share this information with your stakeholders and the wider organization. And thirdly, you need to find standardized metrics. So you need to have a structured way of identifying which metrics are valid. Because in today's organizations, there's a lot of data flying around. We have analytics tools, we have business data, we do user interviews and research. And when you try to map a customer journey and identify which the key metrics are that are going to tell you whether or not the user succeeds, it can be quite easy to grab the closest, so to speak, metrics that are at hand. So you open up Google Analytics and just pick some kind of metric that's interesting to you. But our realization is that you have to start with the customer journey and identify what are the users actually trying to achieve. And then you can see whether or not you actually have metrics that can show you that. And this in itself is not actually a problem because it can be an opportunity. Because your stakeholders will be better informed if they also know that you lack data in a certain aspect of the journey. So when they make decisions, they can take that into account. Or that could also be a trigger for you to actually try to implement some kind of metric there. So metrics should come after you have realized what the customer journey is and not the other way around. And when we talk about metrics, as I mentioned previously also, you need to have a diverse group of stakeholders that can work in this way. But it's important to remember that not all stakeholders are the same. And everybody are not like data wizards or have taken statistics at university. So when you communicate around metrics, you need to find a way to communicate in a way that everybody understands. And this could be like visualizing your KPIs through traffic lights or any other form of like infographic or visualization. But the key point here is that you want your users, the stakeholders, to actually understand what the information is, to get this cohesive and coherent experience for them. So the thinking is that if you get these three parts right, then you will have some impact. And the first one that you hopefully will achieve is that you will get alignment. So now the stakeholders that are involved in this work will have a shared view of what the customer's experience is. And based on that alignment, you will hopefully also be able to do better decisions. So based on information, your stakeholders can actually make better decisions and not just base decisions on gut feeling or stuff like that. Your stakeholders won't always be in agreement of what's the best decision to take, but at least they're talking from a shared picture of what the information is. And the third one is continuity. So if you're organized in this way, you have people within your organization that's actually working with this on a day-to-day basis, and you have metrics in place that are measuring how your services are delivering value to your users on a continuous basis, then you will also get improvement over time. And I'm saying this in contrast to how many other projects have been run when it comes to user experience, where you might just do a one-off project trying to fix this one single thing. And when the project is done, you're left with a deliverable in form of a PDF on somebody's laptop. And 6 months down the road, nobody remembered what happened in that project. So this is also a way of trying to actually achieve this continuity and be able to improve over time and see what the changes are. So, as I've been talking about board games, I think I'll leave you with this last question or a quote. And that's like, if your work with your customer journey, like the work in the organization, were a board game, who would be the players in your organization that would be at the table, and what rules would they play it with? Thank you.